If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so excited today to have on the line with us from Los Angeles, California, Megan Kuhlmann, who is the co-founder and the managing director of her wonderful website, GreenIsSexy.org. And Megan, welcome to Green is Good.
Oh, hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Hey, Megan grew up in Minnesota, which is a very green state, but she now lives in Los Angeles and also works full-time at Gensler, which is a global architecture firm well known around the world. But she had the epiphany and the vision to start GreenIsSexy.org back in 2007. Megan, what's up with that? How did that happen, and why did you start this site?
Well, I think it's actually kind of an interesting story. My best friend, Rachel McAdams, and I were on the phone one night, and we were talking about some challenges that we were having greening our workplace a little bit. And she was doing some things to green a movie set that she was working on at the time, and I had just started a greening the office committee at my firm, and we were sort of swapping ideas on some things that we'd initiated, but also brainstorming on some other ideas that we could come up with. And the conversation, twisted and turned the way that conversations between best friends do, but somehow we sort of landed on the idea that so many of our friends we had found did not know that keeping your cell phone charger plugged into the wall, even when it's not plugged into the cell phone, was continuing to suck up large amounts of energy. About 35% of the energy is still sucked up when it's plugged into the wall without anything plugged into the charger.
Right.
And we couldn't believe that so many of our own friends didn't know this, let alone our coworkers that we were trying to help green a little bit. And our friends are collectively very smart, very socially aware, and really informed people. And we just thought this was kind of crazy. And so we started to think about it, and we thought, well, if our friends who are this cool don't know about it, think about all the other people in the world who don't really care about green, or maybe they're not that plugged in yet, no pun intended. Maybe they don't know it either. And so Rachel actually had the idea of working on a program together, and she said, let's start something. Let's try to come up with a project idea where we can get the message out to people about all of these little things that they just might not know that they don't know. And I said, well, that's a great idea in theory, Rach, but what are you talking about? And she said, well, what if we did a website? And I loved the idea immediately, and the only problem was that neither one of us had ever started a website before. And while we're both very proficient at email and other sort of office suite tools, we did not know the first thing about starting a website. And Rachel actually said, what about Dee Dee? And so we asked our friend Dee Dee Bathurum, who was working for Microsoft at the time and has a career in online media, if she would get involved with us and if the three of us could start this project together. And Dee Dee agreed after about a second and a half, I think it was. And we were off to the races, and we've done the site now for 3 years.
That is just amazing. So the three of you started this together and are still the managing founders of it. And so tell us what was the vision though? Okay, so the vision is you launch GreenIsSexy.org, and give us a little bit about the background. I'll give you a few things. The last couple of weeks, Mike and I have had some wonderful experiences. Like one of our guests a couple of weeks back was Rebecca Tickell, and she wrote a new book called Hot, Rich, and Green about women in the green revolution. And we said to her, does hot refer to, global warming? She goes, no. Women who are doing this, who are really leading this green revolution, are hot, John. No matter what they look like, they're hot. So we love that green is sexy. This is great. So what does that mean to you and to your partners?
Well, the three of us really feel that, sexy can be a lot of things to different people. But I think between the three of us, we might have different tastes in people, men, for example, in a certain physical differences. But we all agree that being smart is really sexy, and being socially conscious is sexy, and being a steward of the environment is really sexy, and just really caring about things beyond yourself and getting out in the world and making a difference or trying to make a difference is really sexy. And so we thought, being green isn't about being granola or the old image of the 60s hippie, which we love and embrace, but, I think the green movement has come a long way. And so we kind of wanted to rebrand the green movement a little bit and say it's not corny or hippy-dippy. It's sexy to be green. It's sexy to care about something beyond yourself.
Perfect. I love it. And so now on the site every day, and I've been on your site, Mike's been on your site, he's in front of it right now, and it's so well done. You run a new tip every day.
Every day.
Listen, in the beginning that sounds like fun. It's like writing in your diary every day, but all of a sudden, sometimes the process can take over and it can become a little daunting. How do you come up with new material and a new tip every day? What are your sources of inspiration and information?
Well, I think really the biggest source of inspiration for us is really our own lives.
Okay.
And I think once you start to look at the world through this sort of greener filter to find out what are little ways that you can reduce your impact every single day, you start to stumble upon tip after tip after tip. And so a lot of the tips really do come from our daily lives. For example, we ran a tip not so long ago about looking for gum that is not in the little plastic push-out pack. And that really came from my own struggle at the gas station to purchase some gum that wasn't in a plastic package because I tried to reduce how much plastic I purchase in the world.
Right.
And so the next thing you know, I thought, well, there's a tip right there. Buy gum that's not in a little plastic pack. So the tips are often as small as that. Look for gum that's not in a plastic package. Sometimes they're larger, buy a hybrid car or, don't travel by airplane. But more often than not, there's something very small, like, be conscious of what kind of gum you're buying. And so that the idea is that it would be harder for you to explain to me why you're not doing the tip of the day than it would be to probably just do the tip of the day.
Boy, that makes so much sense. It really does, Megan. And a simple thing like that, you think about, well, doesn't gum just come in paper with foil wrapper? No, more and more. No, you're right. And I just thought about that the last time I bought gum. I had to look for something that I wanted, just the regular old paper and foil packaging. And that was a bit of a challenge. And I hadn't really thought about that or remembered it until you brought it up just now.
Well, that plastic package will last forever. So when you think about it, your gum might last you anywhere from 5 minutes to a few hours, right? But the packaging is going to last on this planet for forever. Wow. And I certainly don't want, if I'm going to put plastic on the planet for, the rest of time, I'd like it to be for something a little weightier than, because I'm thirsty or because I want to chew some gum.
Right. That's amazing, the irony there.
Yeah. And Mike and I always talk about on this show, and we have great people like you on this show who are solution-based and are sharing with our listeners solutions, because if we all do little things like you just pointed out, Megan, the results will be huge if we all just start engaging.
That's right. It really is. It's a collective effort. And what we really want to emphasize on Green is Sexy, too, is that it's about what you can do. And when we started the site, we poked around the net to see what other things were out there that might we certainly didn't want to step on anybody's toes, and we didn't want to create something that already existed.
Right.
So we're kind of combing the web to see some other sites that were out there, and boy, there sure are a lot of great sites on the net for green information. But a lot of them were sort of a little bit more negative, and they talked a lot about we've done all of this damage to the planet. Time is running out. It was very daunting. It was very intimidating. It was very scary. And again, the three of us were already plugged in. And so we thought about, the sort of faceless reader at the time as somebody who maybe was being inundated with all of these negative images and ideas. And we thought, well, let's emphasize what you can do and try to show people that it's not too late if we all get together and unplug our cell phone chargers. Look at how much energy we can save. So we try to come at it from that. We try to really stay away from the word never or don't. So if you read through some of the tips, you'll very rarely see us use terms that say what you shouldn't do. We flip it and try to encourage you to do this or look at this other option or consider this possibility or this choice instead.
Well, that's why we're so excited that you've joined Mike and myself today, because that's what this show does. And we don't engage, and we love what you're talking about. We don't engage in the politics of fear.
Yes.
You know, it's more about positive behavior, positive change. And as one of our guests brought Mike and I, made us aware of this wonderful way of approaching things, it's an intelligent optimism.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, and you know, you see all the stuff that's going on, and you say, hey, we can go conquer it if we all participate. And
Absolutely.
That's why we're so thrilled to have you on today. So, you're a lifestyle site, though. I mean, I know that's how you've positioned yourself. What other differentiating factors do you have from other eco sites out there? Because, since 2007, this movement is growing, and it's here to stay. The green revolution is really here to stay. Well, how are you continuing to reposition yourself and get your site to more eyeballs out there?
Well, I think, what sets us apart from other sites is, like I said, our sort of positivity and our lean on what is possible and what can be done.
Gotcha.
And also the fact that we're really showing people practical application of green lifestyle. So if we're going back to unplugging your cell phone charger or looking for gum that comes not in a plastic package, it's more about things of that nature, whereas some of the other sites out there might be a little more product-focused or a little bit more about the latest scientific discoveries or technologies, or they might be a little more animal-focused, for example.
Right.
And I think there's room for everyone in the pool.
Yeah.
But maybe what sets us apart a little bit is we've got maybe a younger, a slightly more youthful voice. And it really is just the three of us that run the entire site.
That's
we don't
so
have
wonderful.
Staff. We write every tip ourselves. We research every tip ourselves.
Good for you.
Come up with all the ideas ourselves. So when you read the site and you see who the contributors are, it really truly is just three of us. Most of the pictures we took ourselves.
You are your own webmaster then,
but that's why the site's so authentic, because you three are really doing it.
We're really doing it.
But that's okay. But, Mike and I were so lucky and so honored to have last week Randy Painter on our show. And Randy is the co-founder, brilliant guy from Harvard and Stanford, and co-founder actually was the founder of, in 1998, care2.org, which has 14 million members, Megan.
Wow.
Yeah, in 12 years, though. And so now he's been a winner in both the technological revolution and the green revolution. And we asked him last week how many of his members are they 50-50 male-female? And he said no, 75% of his members of the 14 million were women. And so, again, you're proving with your partners that women are truly leading this green revolution.
Well, I'll tell you, it feels really special to be part of the green community, and I've met so many really, really cool people in the 3 years that we've been running the site, and I would agree with that percentage that at least 70% of the green people that I have met, the leaders, are women as well. Debbie Levin over at Emma, she's a fantastic example. My own mentor is Lynn Hirschfield over at Participant Media. She's a fantastic green woman, and she's an author and producer. And, I just met Zem Joaquin of EcoFabulous.com. And even here at my own firm, the head of sustainable design for all of Gensler's 33 worldwide offices, her name is Nellie Reed, and she's a fantastic green designer and lead accredited trainer and all these things. So I just meet so many cool green people, and you're right, so many of them are women. And I can't help but wonder how much of that has to do with, I don't know, if I were more clever, maybe I could come up with something about Mother Earth.
Yeah,
and making a parallel to that, but
you're right.
I think it has something to do with a natural instinct to nurture and to care give and to look beyond yourself and look toward further generations in that way.
Hey, you know what? That's so well put, and Mike says that all the time. That's what Mike was talking about with Randy last week. The three of you are truly inspirational to all, and a lot of our listeners always like to know, besides you growing up in Minnesota and your other two partners growing up in other parts here in the States, were the three of your parents, were they the influence on you to be greenies? Was it education based? Where did you guys get this, this burning passion to do this?
Well, I can't speak for Dee Dee and Rachel on this one, but I can definitely say for me that growing up in Minnesota, I don't ever remember a time when the environment wasn't a huge part of the discussion. And I'm wondering maybe if a lot of that had to do with the fact that there are so many lakes there. And it's not just a land of 10,000 lakes on the bumper sticker and on the license plates and on those signs everywhere, but it really truly is part of the culture, all of the lakes in Minnesota. So I remember learning at a very early age that if the neighbor was putting fertilizer on their lawn, that eventually that was going to roll into the storm drains and it was going to run down into the lakes. And that's why in the summer when you would drive around one of the lakes, it might be really smelly, or you might not be able to swim in a certain lake that summer because there was a big algal bloom. I remember learning very, very early that a huge contributing factor to those things was fertilizer on the lawns. And I don't remember life where we didn't have a recycling bin. I grew up right in the city in Minneapolis, and we've literally had recycling in Minneapolis my entire life. I don't have any memory where we didn't. But, you know, my mom, she laughs. She's very proud of the site, and she's really thrilled that we're doing this kind of work. But she says, now, Megan, I know you're calling it green, but when I was growing up, we just called it being broke. And I think, you know, a lot of that comes from we didn't have a ton of extra money. And so you just wouldn't walk out of a room and leave the light on. Yeah. And you wouldn't overuse things. You'd use things till they were gone. And, you know, your cottage cheese container became the Tupperware that took your lunch. And the bread bag was what your wet swimsuit had to come home from camp in. And so we just sort of, we reduced, we reused, and we recycled my entire life. And a school trip to Long Lake Conservation Camp growing up also really changed my way of thinking at a very early age. I went there starting at age 9 with school, and we learned practical things like orienteering and how to look at the stars and figure out the constellations. But I remember very specifically a man gave a speech on styrofoam. And at the time, McDonald's and the other fast food companies were still packaging all the food in styrofoam. I'm sure you remember those days. And he had an illustration of what the landfills would look like in however many years, 20 years, 100 years. I'm not sure now how many it was. But I remember his graphics having such an impact on me and almost feeling a sense of panic at 9, 10 years old that we were going to be drowning in styrofoam.
Oh, boy.
And also as a product of the 80s, they taught us a lot about CFCs in our hairspray, in our aerosol hairspray in the 80s and learning about that. And so I remember getting in a campaign very, very young to ban CFCs in hairspray and to look for hairspray that came in a pump instead of a can. And in the 80s, that was a very significant lifestyle change, I have to say. For one's bangs, that was a big sacrifice. But I feel like it's just always been a part of my life. And it makes a lot of sense to be working in the field now.
Well, it makes, and like you said, a lot of it was born out of what your mom's point was, necessity, and a lot of it was also, and it still is, just good common sense.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, out of all the tips you've given in the last 3 years, what is your favorite green tip? Mike and I always love to learn these kind of things.
Well, there's so many, there really are, and my favorite ones are always the ones that Dee Dee and Rachel write. But my favorite tip that I ever wrote, I did write a tip on the site about ice cream. And I think it's a very pertinent tip for this time of year.
Okay.
And really, something little that you can do to green the world, to reduce your impact, is to buy your ice cream in a cone instead of in a cup.
That is so perfect. And, you know, if our listeners are just tuned in, we're with Megan Kuhlmann here. She's the managing director and founder of GreenIsSexy.org. If open up your iPad, your laptop, your computer, GreenIsSexy.org. It's a wonderful website, and you get a tip every day, which is just really inspirational. And Megan just shared her favorite tip. And what is your favorite? You know, what are you have 3 partners. What do each of you do? Like, name one thing that, you know, obviously you're all greenies now, but what are you each doing to improve the environment? Like, one thing. Does one of you drive a hybrid? Does one of you recycle more than the others? Like, who's really the recycler? Who's the hybrid driver? What's one big thing that each of you are doing to show the walk that you're on?
All right. Well, I am the only hybrid driver because I'm the only driver.
Really?
Both Dee Dee and Rachel don't have cars.
Wow.
And, yeah, if you can believe it. So I have a Prius that I drive here around Los Angeles.
Good for you. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I do. But Rachel, I would say her big thing is her commitment to minimizing travel really astounds me.
That's great.
And she literally took a train from Los Angeles to Toronto once, where she lives. to avoid the emissions of an airplane. And I thought that was just so commendable. She had a little bit of extra time, and that's what she chose to do. And so she really walks the walk that way. And Miss Dee Dee, she does so much with composting and all that. And to me, that is extreme. I always say to people, you can start really small with your gum and your ice cream cones and your cell phone charger. But to me, if you work your way up to the higher level green things like buying a hybrid or, putting bamboo flooring in your house, to me, composting is really up there with that.
Got it.
Well, let me ask you this,
Big
too.
commitment.
Well, Megan, didn't Dee Dee recently move to New York City?
She did.
And so that's
her car behind.
Yeah, and that's a double challenge to compost then.
Well, that's right. And so I really commend her for doing that. And so she's kind of our expert on which are the best kitchen composters and things of that nature. And Dee Dee does a lot with e-cycling. I know you guys are really involved with that kind of stuff.
Right. And so we're down to the last 2 minutes, Megan, and our listeners are, they're young, they're old, obviously male and female across the world, frankly, and they all listen to great people like you, Megan, who are so inspirational and also full of great information, and they think to themselves, why not me? How can I be the next Megan Kuhlmann? So what would you share with our listeners as we, start moving towards the end here as some pearls of wisdom of your journey so far, the last 3 years, and then where you want to take it with your partners?
Wow, well, that's a big question. I think really what people need to realize is that they are important and that they do matter, and we are all the same. And if you have an idea and a passion, you should just jump out there and start swimming, and don't be afraid. And I think we could all use a little bit more bravery these days. And I think that's the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to get in and start swimming and see what you find. And you might not like it. You might love it. You might not succeed. You might, have astronomical success. But I think if we all just are a little bit braver and believe in ourselves a little bit more, we can make a huge difference if we just try. And I think that that's really what it took for us was just, can we do this? We don't know how to do this. All right, well, let's just try it and see what happens. And we've really grown a lot in the last 3 years. And I think sky's the limit for Green is Sexy. I would love to see us branch out and do some other things and incorporate more reader feedback and ideas and tips into what we do. So everyone should feel free to email us their tips.
Hey, and also, for all of our listeners out there, please go to Megan's website, GreenIsSexy.org. It's such a wonderful website. And get inspired every day with her daily tips. And sign up, put in your email address and sign up and get that daily tip. I think that would be really a great start for all our listeners. And Megan, you are just so wonderful. You're full of great information. You're a great woman, ecopreneur. You're young and you're sexy, and you are truly living proof that green is good.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, you guys. It's been a blast.